how long it takes to catch up.
The streaming. What? The streaming.
So I believe we are live now with Teatime Tales chat number 3 after a brief hiatus. I did promise originally that it was going to be kind of flying by the seat of our pants irregular schedule, but we are back. And by we, I
That was a
mean...
smart promise to make.
Yeah. Hey, Sean, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How about you?
Not bad, just still recovering a little bit from the holidays and all its assorted illnesses and issues.
It's amazing how when you become an adult and there's obligations, they get thrown into the merriment. How onerous the entire thing becomes. Like the holiday hangover is a real thing.
Yeah, it takes like a good... Well, it's already mid-January, isn't it?
I know, right?
It's the first week of January.
I feel like I'm just pulling out of it.
Yeah, I have no excuse, I guess, but but here we are.
Oh yeah.
So our topic today is going to be talking about our favorite quests, and I guess part of that will be thinking about what makes a quest our favorite and potentially what makes a quest not as much of one of our favorites. So kind of breaking down that whole dynamic of the game. And but before we get into that, we can do our usual kind of catch up. So what have you been playing in terms of Lord of the Rings recently?
I've pretty much been doing exclusively campaign. I've been using the content lull as an excuse to finally get off my ass and do it. And it's good. My fellowship is through the road darkens, about to jump into treason of Saruman? Treason or treachery?
Treason
Of Saruman. So one interesting thing, and I don't know if anyone else does this, but I got to that box and I was like, well, the fellowship technically just broke. So why is everyone still here? So what I'm doing, I'm taking my two-handed campaign and I'm making it four-handed, yo.
Oh.
Yeah, so basically I said, all right, whatever happens. Whoever Frodo ends up with during the breaking of the Fellowship, that's the deck that's going to go with Frodo, and the other deck is going to go on to Aragorn and friends. And yeah, so I'm interested to see how that goes. So one fun play that I had, though, so and foreshadowing for later, I suppose, because Journeys in the Dark, the Moria quest out of The Road Darkens, is one of my favorite quests in the game. I was playing that one, and in campaign mode, killing the Balrog is just kind of an imperative because you do not want those burdens to carry through. They are terribad. Especially that stupid one with setup. God, it's annoying.
Yeah, anything with setup is... Although once you start getting a critical mass of like 4 or 5 or 6 burdens in an encounter deck, that it gets kind of hairy.
I mean, hell, I'm ready to just throw Lanwin in one of the decks just because the stupid burdens just come up every damn turn.
Yeah.
And Surge, and some of them I would argue don't need Surge, but that's a topic for another time, I suppose. Anyway, so I was going through Journey in the Dark, and we got to the bridge and the Balrog scene, as it happens, and I'm able to get some damage on the Balrog, and I'm kind of doing my math, and this is the turn that we traveled to the bridge. So I'm like, all right, next turn we bust through it. He's going to lose his keywords, whatever hero is going to go. So I'm like doing my battle math, and I'm like, I can get him to 14 health. And then I side-eyed across the table my hero Gandalf. Like, oh, this is happening. So sure enough, I got him down to 14 health. We traveled through the next turn, and Gandalf popped him for the kill. And I'm not much of like a theme nerd. I don't feel the need to recreate everything that happened in the books, but that one felt good.
Sure. Yeah. I think in my two-handed campaign that I was running for the blog, which hopefully I'll get a chance to finish at some point. those entries take so long to write. I did the same thing where Gandalf ended up being the one sacrificed, but he had his triumphant return later. But yeah,
it's fun. Yeah, and oddly enough, and this is kind of tangential to what I was talking about, but I kind of decided that I'm going to be kind of freeform with the decks that I play. When I first started planning this, I'm like, all right, I have to play my absolute favorite heroes. This just has to be the best thing ever, and I have to plan it out and blah blah blah. So really, I started doing that and found it kind of impossible to plan the long term because there's so much stuff that happens. So it's just like, all right, end of the day, I just want my two favorite heroes to be involved. So Gandalf and Gloin were the only kind of needs. So I actually ended up making a Gandalf Gloin deck that kind of works really well.
Nice.
And it was a really happy accident that came out of over planning. Oh man, well prepared with Gandalf to get a free Citadel plate onto Gloin. It's juicy.
I need to do a campaign at one point with Grimo with my favorite hero, just so he can have the moment of betrayal, and that's the part that will suck, is I won't be able to use him once I get to that box. But
Yeah, I was about to say, because isn't there a part of that box that literally says the players
it,
cannot play Saruman or Grima?
yeah, yeah, because
Mm.
there's that Grima enemy in the
Yeah. Oh my
third
god, the
quest.
Grima enemy is so good.
Although I could
I
just do
forgot
a
about
parallel
that.
universe where it's like the twin brothers or something, but
Isn't he just doomed too? And when he would be defeated, shuffle him back into the deck.
he just yeah, he pops
God,
in
what
and
a
then
dweeb! That's so good.
it totally fits his character though, for sure. For my part, I haven't been able to play too much in the past couple weeks because of the aforementioned holidays and sickness and everything. But other than the Tea Time Tales actual playthroughs, let's see what I've been playing. I've been trying to go through my campaign, but you can tell how well that's been going because I just finished the Old Forest, just the second quest. So,
Oh yeah.
but
Did you give it to Old Man Willow?
oh, big time. Because in the past I have been doing more of the theme plays, and since this go around with a campaign, I'm like, I'm gonna do more of the alternate history route. So my deck is, oh boy, who do I have? I have Gandalf, Lore Aragorn, and Glorfindel, I think. So it's just like uber power deck.
What? That is thematic as hell.
It is, yeah. It's just not as thematic in Black Riders when I'm just, or Old Forest when I'm mowing
Oh
down
sure,
like Nazgul,
sure.
but yeah, in
That's
the
fair.
later parts, yeah, I was like, it still makes sense with those three, but yeah, the
In this
card,
alternate universe, everyone was just on time.
yeah, exactly, and they just killed everything, and that was it. It was a nice, easy stroll to Rivendell. But that deck just has insane draw because Gandalf already does, and then Expert Treasure Hunter and the Dunedain Pipe, and it's.
Oh,
I
it's
think
so dirty.
I think I'm gonna put Will of the West in there just because it's like I'm gonna go through the deck too fast. So yeah.
Do you have any threat reduction events in there, or oh, did you say it was Loragorn? So probably no.
I no, I'm running with no
Okay.
threat reduction in there. Yeah,
I was just
currently.
curious, like if you're going like full pipe deck, because now you have access to Frodo, you can just toss a cheeky, Hobbit pipe in there.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
if you're
Without
not running any of
Aragorn, I
those events,
probably would, but yeah. I don't know. We'll see as the campaign goes on and how I'll handle the different things,
mm-hmm.
but yeah,
It's
eventually I need to delve back into nightmare mode, but
mm,
that's just a whole nother can
I'm
of
glad it's
worms.
out there for people who enjoy it. I will say I have enjoyed Nightmare where it revitalizes a quest that kind of fell flat for me.
Yeah.
That's where I enjoy Nightmare. I personally don't feel the need for extra challenge.
Which, like, as the cycles go on, that becomes less necessary in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if there's
Especially
anything.
because they're coming out so soon after the actual release. Like, not a whole lot in the state of the game has changed.
Yeah, I think about, say, the Harad cycle quest. Like, there's not really many of those that I just say, oh, I want a harder version of that quest, you know? So, maybe
What, you don't
some.
want the Muma kill where each of them has like 25 hit points? Reap per turn. Enjoy, bitches.
And maybe something like Temple of the Deceived, like in the Dream Chaser. Maybe some of the easier quests that have fun mechanics. Maybe I would want Nightmare mode, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna make a push to go forward with campaign mode is my big thing. So we talked a bit about some of the quests we like, and our kind of catch-up discussion, but that's gonna be our topic today: favorite quests. And so I guess we can just get started with kind of throwing out some of the quests that we feel are our favorite overall. So besides Journey in the, or you can even talk about Journey in the Dark. What's one of your favorite
Ah, hell, I'll
quests?
talk about Journey in the
Yeah.
Dark all day. Moria is my favorite segment of the entire series, so that's just me. I don't know what kind of makes a good quest for me is the theme has to be on. It has to be kind of an event or situation that grabs me. Like the classic dungeon crawl is pretty cool,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know. Like, there are some of my favorite quests are really hard quests, but when it's hard, it has to be interesting hard to grab me. It can't just be, oh, these cards have high numbers. That's
Yeah.
that's that's why it's hard. So, what kind of sticks out for you in the quests that you like?
Hmm. Well, I tend to be a more. I'm trying to think of the right word. Um, because people usually use fiddly in the bad sense, but I feel like I like the complicated stuff. Um, Not if it's. I don't like just a bunch of stuff to keep track of for the sake of it, like say antlered crown and a bunch of time counters, like not that. But I like the creative, like wonky mechanics, like say the map in Temple of the Deceived, or even the whole kind of dungeon escape in Mount Graham. Just
So
something
you're
that's really
you got a
unique
hankering
about
for
it.
some jank on the encounter deck side.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely like something that's doing things differently. And
So okay, so Temple of the Deceived. You get another, for instance, of one that really breaks the template. Did you like the sailing quest a lot?
yes and no. I do. I love the whole that it's giving you something to do with the quest phase, and you kind of have to make those decisions. And I like the ship enemies and the boarding that it makes you. It kind of changes your whole calculations around encounter and engagement. So I guess I like anything that kind of changes what you think you know about the game. The no part of it is that I found the sailing, it kind of forces you into certain kind of decks a lot of times because you just need to pump
Mm-hmm.
out the allies to do the sailing test unless you're
You
just
just
gonna
need
totally
meat
blow
in
them.
seats.
Yeah, totally. It could be a little snowburn scout or whoever, it doesn't matter. So it kind of forces you in a lot of ways to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But overall I like the sailing, but that isn't enough on its own. Like Murder at the Prancing Pony is a good example. Like that's just a totally out there thing, but I think it hits a
Yes.
nice balance
Mm-hmm.
of of challenge while having a creative mechanic.
Not
Yeah,
being a
and
cakewalk.
I definitely like something that's challenging, but if it's just hitting you with too much feel bad, then it just hits this threshold where it's not going to be my favorite quest anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, as I kind of explore my salt as an old man here, I've kind of figured out that what I really hate is control mechanics, like hard control mechanics that don't really do anything to make interesting choices. All they do is limit options.
Yeah.
So anything along the lines of like those stupid cards that just blank everyone. Like, oh, okay, great. I guess that's happening. It's no fun way to play around it outside of just having a test of will in my hand. So anything like that's definitely going to turn me off. Although I will say, Helm's Deep is up there in my favorite quest, and it has one of the worst freaking offenders of that with the was it Devilry of Saruman? Is that treachery?
Yeah, Devilry of Cerimon. Yeah, and Helm's Deep is one of my favorite quests, and at the same time, it does have, like you mentioned, Devilry of Saruman, which is a terrible treachery in terms of what it can do to you. But I don't know. I think everything works together in that quest. Like the way
Don't
I
mind the
kind of
garage door opening.
no problem. The way I think about that is, and I mentioned this in the recent Great Company book club episode 2, which will be coming out soon, hopefully. But the reason I like the treachery in that quest is because even though that can be lead to some feel bad moments, like it's almost a necessary treachery in that quest because you can get to instances where you kind of get control and the encounter deck's not able to like wear you down, and then that comes along and it's just like that unpredictable moment in the battle. Um,
Yeah. And I appreciate that encounter decks need stuff like that, but it does create the feel bads when you're just barely maintaining parity or you're behind and that comes out. It's like, all right, goop, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
So I
definitely.
don't know. That's definitely it's definitely not as simple as my normal complaints make it sound. It's a line to tread.
Well, it's almost like yeah. The more I talk about it, it's like a secret sauce that goes into the favorite quest, and it's hard to pin it down to one thing because it's all these different factors that have to go into it. It's almost easier to
Yep.
talk about the quests that I don't like and what makes them horrible.
So okay, so give me another for instance of something that kind of goes outside of the box.
Okay, well one of the quests that's still one of my all-time favorites is Steward's Fear. And
Mm-hmm.
um two reasons. One is, well, I'd say there's a few things that go into it being out of the box. One is just the setting theme, which doesn't have much to do with the mechanics, but like we hardly have anything to do with like cloak and dagger stuff in a city. Like that's something that I would like to see explored again in the future because we don't have too much with that. And then the other parts of it are the cool like random villain and plot they have. It just creates this nice story and changes how the scenario feels each time because the and loss conditions change. And then the last part is sometimes it's not even in the quest mechanics itself, but just like interesting encounter card effects like is it the knife in the back or knife in the I think it's knife in the back,
Yeah,
right?
a knife in the back.
That one can lead to feel bad moments for sure if you get if it hits you at the wrong time. The
Friggin'
the
Gandalf
but
every
the
time.
but the theme of it, yeah, he's the biggest traitor in the world. Like I swear
He
it's been
really is.
Gandalf like 3 out of 4 times. But the reason I like it is because it's just I don't know. Sometimes I just want novelty. I want a different kind of effect. I don't want like the fifth version of search the encounter deck for an enemy and spawn it. You know. So
Yeah, and you know what? As I sit here and kind of generally agree with you, um, I'm kind of finding a theme here where we like interesting out of the box experience that kind of guides you towards something that's mechanically different from kind of the baseline template that was set for say a passage through Mirkwood, where it's more interesting than just turning your guys sideways and comparing numbers.
right. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, which ultimately is what mechanically at the end of the day what we're doing most of the time. So yeah, and that's one of the reasons I really like Journey in the Dark because the first few times I played that, I kind of played as my normal aggro self and was like, all right, that stupid archer's up there pinging at me. I'm gonna grab him down and fight him. And every time I would engage an enemy, the stupid doom 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 counters would come off. And then by the time I got to the Chamber of Mazarbul, I didn't have enough enemies to kill in time to get through it because you need 3 times the number of players in the game. And you need to kill that many enemies, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, well, what the hell is going on here? So then I started playing. I just adjusted my play strategy to leave stuff up there, kind of throwing some healing to deal with it, and then just gear up for combat by the time we get to the Chamber of Mazarbul. Quest hard to get there, and then the enemies are all kind of lined up in a shooting gallery by the time you get there. And it ended up just being like, it's just cool little things like that I didn't see right away that you kind of figure out, and it clicks.
Yeah, and another thing about that quest, kind of going along with what you're saying, is the quests that force you to find a strategy, but also the ones that are open to multiple strategies.
Yes,
Like I mentioned,
yes.
Steward's Fear, but that's also applicable to Journey in the Dark because you can just go like the all-out questing route. And I think it was with kind of my Hobbit deck. I had to take that route because I wasn't taking on no Balrog, and I think that was one of the few times that I actually finished it without the Balrog appearing. And then, or you can just go this more like combat heavy route. I think all of those lead to. I mean, just naturally, you're gonna want to play them more, and because they are open to different ways of doing them and almost like mini achievements. Like, can you do it before the Balrog arrives? Like, you can still win if not, but it's almost like an extra kind of goalpost to strive towards.
Yeah, yeah, and it produces cool stories for sure. So another one that I want to call mention to. It's kind of one like if I don't have an agenda, if I'm not testing a new deck or making and trying a new quest or busting through campaign, like I have played and never regretted playing the three trials so many times. I love that scenario two handed. Fewer than that, it gets blisteringly hard.
Yeah, it
More than that,
does.
it gets a little easy. Two handed is such a good sweet spot for that, or two player, I suppose, if you prefer, is such a good sweet spot for that quest. And it's got kind of the same things going on for it that the Steward Sphere has, because it's got the random enemies and barrows. You can choose to do the different tests in a different order, and the whole thing just it's a cool little quest, and I've gone back to it so many times because of that. It's also
Yeah.
doing something different, right? Where it's the focus on the boss enemies, but they're not like these crazy crushing boss enemies like the Balrog. They're just interesting enemies that are augmented by kind of focused treacheries. And man, I just love that quest.
And they have the different time effects that go off, so you actually have time pressure to take them out. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I agree. In solo, it kind of narrows you down to a few decks. But definitely two handed. I've had great runs of that, and that is definitely another one of my favorites. I feel like a lot of my favorites almost for lack of a better way to phrase it, kind of incorporate some almost like video gamey mechanics. Like Three Trials is like get the keys and face the next boss. And what's another
And
one
it's
that I was
like
thinking along those lines? I can't remember now off the top. Oh, Escape from
Belagoth.
Mount Graham,
Oh,
actually.
Graham.
Yeah, that was the one
Yeah.
I was mentioning earlier. The same thing. It is on the easier side, and sometimes I don't play it as much because it can be a pain to do the special setup.
Yes, this is the
Um,
setup that stops me from doing it. Otherwise, I'd love that
yeah,
one.
it's much better on Octagon where they have the little script that just does it for you. But
Hmm.
that's another one I like because I those are always my favorite missions in video game RPGs where you get captured and then all your stuff is taken and you got to break out and get your stuff. So I just love how well they replicated that in that quest.
Hmm. Yeah, and what's funny is Kirith Gurad came out recently, and I just hate complaining about this all the time, but I really liked what was happening in that quest. It had some really cool things going on, but at the end of the day, I was like, do these need to be fours and fives? Like all these numbers are just so high. Like I can play this quest and lose most of the time with a pretty moderate deck, and I don't want to break out a power deck every time. It's like, ugh. But the quest is so solid, and it just kind of makes me sad when my filthy casualness kind of gets in the way like that.
It's a thing. I mean, and I feel like my tastes have changed dramatically because
Yeah.
I definitely remember in the earlier life of the game, like I wouldn't say dumping, but I would like kind of look down my nose at quests like Amon Din and even a Mount Graham just for being too. Oh no, not Mount Graham. Trouble in Tharbad for being too easy.
Oh, I love Tharbad.
And now that like those are some of my favorite quests because they do things so differently.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do want that big challenge, but sometimes I like something that's just gives you those interesting mechanics in it, and you can take a bunch of weird decks against because it's not gonna smash you.
Yeah. Case in point for me, kind of along what you were saying there is the more recent Tower of Kirith Ungol from Mountain of Fire.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
I kind of criticize Caleb's design in the difficulty sense a lot, but that one to me is so good. It's not blisteringly hard, but there's so many fun little interactions happening there. It paints a scene with card mechanics, and that's what makes a quest for me.
Ye- yeah, yeah. I think that's another part, like I was talking about in Steward's Fear, where the villains are coming together to tell a story, and like you're saying with the Kirith Ungol, like I think the quests that tend to be more of a favorite are the ones that work together to tell a kind of story,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily just matching a theme of a book or whatever, but telling its own story, versus the ones that just tend to feel like I'm just kind of doing the mechanics and plowing ahead and that's it. like I think of Beneath the Sands in the Herod cycle. Like as
Hmm.
the mechanics and quests, it's actually one that I play quite often because it's a good tester, and it's a weird thing because I have mixed feelings about it. Like mechanically, I like the quest, but for some reason, the theme just doesn't come together. Like I don't feel like I'm beneath the sands, like in a almost like aliens type situation. I don't know. It's hard to
It's
describe,
because
but
I don't know. I felt the same way that the theme didn't immerse me like it does sometimes. I think it might be because the on track off track is kind of
mm,
distracting,
yeah.
and you're just like go stop go stop. And I don't know that kind of took me out of the whole creeping caves feel.
It's an advanced game of red light, green light. Yeah, yeah, I definitely feel like that. Like I,
And contrast that kind of similar feel to something like the Drowned Ruins, where that
mhm.
one I thought hit it on the head. Where you can criticize that quest because technically you don't need to interact with that main mechanic, but I generally, I don't know, I have the curse of just kind of playing cards as I feel they're intended. It's a curse. I'm sorry for everyone who just likes to win, but yeah, I do think they nailed the theme there because when you go underwater, it's like, oh, you can't play allies, you can't play assets, things that don't ready, like the things flip and there's crap underwater that you weren't expecting, and it's I don't know. I thought for kind of a similar mechanic, that one really nailed it. So
Yeah, I feel like sometimes they struggle with trying to replicate the getting lost or having to navigate your way type
hmm
quests because that's kind of what Beneath the Sands is doing. And then if we think back to the Long Dark, like that was a big fail to me, like one of the worst
oh, the
quests in the
long
game,
dark.
which was trying to replicate a key part of Moria, which is getting lost, which is hard to do in a card game. I understand that, but I think
hmm
you're right. The Drowned Rooms was more successful, and I think the Fate of Numenor is one that I like. The second quest in the Grey Havens box, which isn't in a dungeon,
Oh,
obviously, but it's
but that was the
also
first one, the Uncharted locations, right?
yeah, it's also trying to replicate like exploring and getting lost, and I think that was more successful in having like double sided locations and I think because it just like you said with the underwater where you don't know what's coming. I think both of those capture with like in different ways. Like you go to a new place and you can be surprised, whereas the Long Dark and Beneath the Sands, it's a more mechanical thing, like the lost
hmm
keyword or the on track off track thing.
hmm And for the record, I definitely would put Beneath the Sands above the Long Dark because the Long
Oh,
Dark was
oh,
just
by a
literally
long
just
margin.
getting on your knee.
Yeah,
The Long
because
Dark was just getting on your knees, drawing as many cards as you could, and praying to RN Jesus to see you through to the end of the day.
yeah, yeah. Definitely. Like the Long Dark failed in many ways, whereas like I said, Beneath the Sands there are things I definitely like about it. It's just
hmm
not as immersive.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So, are there any kind of like classics that you still bring out to the table? Like,
Hmm.
what's like as far as stuff that you would like just look at a list of quests and go, I want to play that one. Does anything like pre, I don't know, Heirs of Numenor or pre Against the Shadow come out?
That's a tough one because mostly I'm looking at Heirs of Numenor on, and even usually Ringmaker on to play. But I think the one probably most often would be Foundations of Stone.
Mm,
That's still one that goes up there as a favorite. Like the whole separate into different um, areas and then having to fight your way out. I think because of again, it's another quest with different paths. Although you don't really get to choose the paths,
no, no, you do not.
it chooses for you. Um, and I mean that's one where you can be vulnerable to luck as well too. Because in solo you can get I can't remember the quest stages now, but there's one that's like a nameless thing layer where you just get hit with like four cards or something. Um,
hmm
so that's another one that can have feel bad moments, but because of the random stages that you can face, it lends itself to those stories that you can like find ways to get yourself out of some hairy situations.
And that quest seems really, really adept at dropping the right person in the wrong place. Like, oh,
It
hey,
really does.
I'm the deck that can fight, so let's go to the quest that requires 17 quest points to get through.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Frodo and Sam, two hero deck, you have four nameless ones. Go.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Um, it's definitely I like it solo, but it's definitely I like it in multiplayer, but because you can have that dynamic of like other players trying if they are better able to handle their own business, then they can kind of rush forward and try to help you out. So I like
Mm.
that aspect of it.
I still find myself going back to the Khazad Doom box. I'll play that all the way through
Mm,
sometimes, just like quest after boom, boom, boom with the same decks, just to kind of get that little progression. Sudden Pitfall notwithstanding, I think those are actually pretty good quests.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, actually, yeah, Kaza Doom is a nice little box for that. It's not up to par with like the more powerful recent decks, but it's kind
No.
of a fun jaunt through Moria. I actually think they
Yeah,
did a good job there with like the swordsman and spearmen that pop into play as shadow effects with like the whole swarming small enemies type feel.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and punishing you for undefended attacks because they're so swarmy,
Yeah.
or backstabbing you and stuff like that. That was kind of the Goblins' first theme that they had. I don't know. I thought those were still pretty solid quests. They're definitely not as hard as they used to be, but you can still get sudden pitfall on turn one, guys. And I know
Yeah.
a fair few people who have almost quit playing the game because that happened.
Yeah. So someone mentioned watch Mr. Trench in our chat mentioned Watcher in the Water earlier in regards to quests without their mechanics. That's not one I would necessarily put as one that I play often these days. It used to be one of my favorites.
Yeah, I remember
But
I used to play that one a lot.
I did think they did some interesting things in the quests with the different like tentacle effects, which would force you to like be careful about the order you do things. But also the puzzle, like it was super easy to cheese, but I think it was like one of those kind of ballsy type effects that they would do in the CCG days, where it's like just an out there mechanic, like discarding a card in hand, and if it matches the letter of, it's just so out there
Yeah, you're
compared to
right.
what we usually see in the LCG days. But I don't think it worked 100% mechanically because of the ways you could get around it, but I definitely like
I
it. It
mean,
was
it
cool.
is. Yeah, no, I agree. That's probably my favorite part about that quest. Even though I think I've gotten through Durin's Door like once, maybe twice.
Yeah.
You kind of have to coordinate to do it properly, or you just kind of have to look at your deck list and again get on your knees and pray to RNGesus.
There was that I played the nightmare version, which you have to complete both, if I'm remembering
Oh
correctly.
God.
Um, and that was actually fun because yeah, it was coming down to I didn't have any like scrying to cheese it, so it was coming down to a hope and a prayer, and it was like the last card in my hand, and then I popped the doors of Durin, so that was pretty awesome.
God. Do you have do you have a favorite of the special event quests from either the fellowships or Gen Con? Dol
Hmm.
Guldur, right?
Oh yeah, of course. um, I want to say it's a toss up between Prancing Pony and Belagast, actually.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Prancing Pony's pretty far up there for me. I do still like Belagast. I think that one's probably like the new standard for me. I could
Yeah.
use a little bit of backing off on the difficulty because you know what? The possibility to win the quest at Gen Con would be nice. And I think what we found this year is yeah, I guess it's possible for someone who's really well coordinated and dedicated to coordinate four players and really have a go at it with well
Yeah.
tuned coordinated decks. But at the end of the day, almost no one does that.
Yeah. And I mean, no one can do it because you don't know what you're going to be facing in advance at
Oh, that
Gen
too.
Con.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I think they need to be more
I want him. I
set
want him.
up so that anyone can not that anyone can do it, but that you don't need special knowledge of the scenario to
Yes.
have a chance at beating it, I guess.
Or yeah. I mean, I'd like to see the Gen Con scenario sit at like a 7 or 8 difficulty, if if numbers can even be used to rate difficulty, which
Yeah.
which is a thing that I would debate. But
I
I still
think.
like massing. No, sorry, go ahead.
I think I was just gonna say on Belagos. I think it would be higher for me, because I love the loot, and this is the
Yes.
one of the few quests that actually gives us loot. If I do have a long-standing gripe with the game, it's like I want more encounter deck loot. Like they did it in
Yes.
Kaza Doom with the I think it was the helm and some kind of weapon you could find, or an axe. That was it that you could
Yep.
find. And then in Belagos, but we need more loot.
I just want the occasional cool effect from the encounter deck. Like
Yeah,
not everything that the adventurers encountered in Middle Earth was terrible and crushing. Like occasionally the world threw him a bone. So things like I just mentioned massing at Osgiliath still is among my favorites. The little Ithilien archers or whatever. No, what were they called? Rangers of Ithilien.
the Rangers of Pavilion. Yeah,
Yeah, so the little Rangers of Ithilien, stuff like that. Like it surges, it doesn't replace an encounter card, it doesn't weaken the encounter deck. Well, I
yeah.
suppose it does by strengthening the players, but still, it's a cool little effect, and those are what make the kind of euphoric, catastrophic rather moments where you're down on your luck and you have no idea how you're going to defend this enemy. Then all of a sudden, the Eagle of the Mountain comes off the top of the Battle of Five Armies deck, and you're like, yeah, now we got something.
Yeah, it's again, it just lends itself to that narrative and those stories you want to tell about the game because yeah, sometimes it's just not all about the smashing the player. Sometimes it's about creating a good story, and we talked about
I
um
wish it were more about that more often.
Kirith Ungol earlier, but that quest does that as well through, the orcs being able to hit each other, and that leads to those kind of interesting moments that you don't expect. So yeah, definitely more of that. But on Belagos, it would be higher on my list, except for your chances of winning can really depend on what loot you get and in what order. So it
Yes,
tends to
yes.
be a bit more random than I would like. But it's still a fun quest.
Especially because how much difference there is in difficulty between having the right loot at the right time
It's
versus
night and
not.
day.
Like
Yeah.
the dragon's a bad enemy, but that stupid lurker in the pit is so
Yeah.
taxing on the players. It is insane. If you can sidestep him and get a little bit more set up before he comes off the encounter deck at some point, then that's a huge boon. And I agree, it's a little rough that it's locked behind just pure chance of getting the right loot at the right time.
I actually still really like, for a long time, Battle of Lake Town was one of my favorites, and I still really like it. Um, I don't play it as often because it requires kind of specialized decks, especially in solo. But I think they did a really good job in that quest of having just a one enemy fight, a big boss dragon fight, and it really captures the feel of like you're facing down the fiercest freaking dragon, and you have to figure out a way to defeat it. I still remember the first time because I had this is I'm trying to remember what time period. I think this is when I was getting back into the game because I had gotten into it like January 2012, and I think there was a period during the summer where I was out of the country, didn't play, and then I got back into it and started really listening to Cardboard of the Rings at the time, and they were going on and on about how difficult it was. So I finally got the quest and was playing it, and I was like, oh man. So I finally got to the point of beating it, and I remember I was like sweaty hands and just like so anxious going into that last turn before finally defeating Smaug. So
I think that was about the time I got into the game. The first time. The only time. That scenario took me a long time to nut up and try out just because of how much I'd heard about it and how much I was just like, that
yeah, I think there's a
but
psychological barrier to that
there
one.
really is. There really is. It's all on me.
Are there any
So
of the first cycle quests that because I don't think we've mentioned any of the first cycle quests. I'm trying to
I
think of.
mean, I still appreciate Journey Down the Anduin for what it was in the game at the
Hmm.
time. I don't play it very often because it is just so much easier nowadays, and the Nightmare version is insanely hard.
Yeah.
Um, but I do still really like Anduin.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, God, that first cycle. It was
Yeah.
fun at the time, but the game has just grown so much since then. I don't ever really find myself wanting to go back. I did play the whole first cycle back through Nightmare, just because of what I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. I thought Nightmare did a good job of kind of refreshing what was there, but you know,
Yeah, me either. I think the only one I might go back to play now would be the Nightmare version of Carrick I liked because I liked the old Carrick quest, but
hmm
now it's just kind of not as on par as it used to be. But the Nightmare version is a interesting challenge. But
yeah, I like how that one that one just completely subverts your expectations based on playing the regular version. Like, oh, you kill
yeah.
all the trolls. Oh, you thought you were done, didn't you? Robin Bob.
I think maybe because everyone has their early part of the game a particular quest that sticks them, and so I think I have Stockholm syndrome with that quest because Conflict at the Carrick was the quest more than any other, not even Escape from Del Godor. That was the one that I just got stuck on. Then finally beating it was like the breakthrough moment for me. So
I think Nate French's unspoken objective with the core set in the first cycle was just to indelibly mark every player of the game with this primal fear of trolls.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I think we all have troll trauma by now.
Because God, like I know I've mentioned it so many times, but that 30 threat threshold in Journey Along the Anduin sticks with so many players when
It really
ultimately
does.
at the end of the day, outside of that quest, most quests don't really care if you're a little bit above 30. I
Yeah.
mean, as long as you can take some extra heat right away, but so many people just will refuse to play a deck over 30 threat, and I think it largely goes back to that.
Yeah, it took me a while. I think it took a lot of us for a while to poke our heads out back over 30 threat. Like a turtle poking its head out is. But now a lot of my decks are over 30 threat. I actually had to
Yeah,
force myself to investigate low threat again because for a while I was just running over 30 decks all the time.
well, I think we all burned out on Spirit Glorfindel so hard that it was
Yeah,
just easy to leave that behind.
true enough.
Can
Uh,
we talk about for a quick moment? And I know this is completely tangential and not at all what we were talking about earlier.
well, that's what
How
we're
do you
here for.
feel? I know, right? Well, how do you feel about the kind of design decision? I don't know if it was when it was consciously made, but it obviously was consciously made at some point. That heroes retain the same, essentially the same stats across different spheres. How do you feel about that in
Mm,
particular?
I I don't have any like hard feelings against it, but I also, if I was on the other side of the table, as it were, in designing it, I don't think I necessarily would have felt like that's something that I would need to stick to. Because I feel like if they're representing different aspects of a character, then potentially that could include the stats as well. Like if like I love Tactics A1 and I don't want her to change, but I could imagine in a different world that you have like the Tactics A1 for has a higher attack for some reason or something like that. Like I don't think there
hmm
would be necessarily anything against that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I asked because I personally am not a giant fan. Like, I'm not opposed to it happening just because it makes sense. But I think it's kind of a weird design lock to put on future heroes because I think Eowyn's a great example where the tactics version. Well, don't get me wrong. I love the tactics version that we got. They nailed it, but they nailed it in spite of the fact that they felt the need to keep her current stats, not because of it. Right.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um,
Um,
so
I'm
Mr.
trying to think
Cringe
of
in the
maybe a
chat
better example.
is asking if we have an example of when we would have liked them to be different.
Hmm.
Um,
Boromir, I think, is a decent example. I would have loved to see Boromir since he's kind of got this ally. Well, Boromir leadership Boromir in general needs a little bit of revamping, but I would have loved to see him maybe with that 3 stat in defense because Gondor kind of at that time was kind of we're the high defense faction, and he's got this ally swarm thing going on. So it'd be really cool to have a hero that can really effectively guard your board. I don't know. That's kind of a small example. I'm not overly offended by Boromir's stats, but I don't know. I just
yeah,
think in general it's a weird thing to lock yourself into.
yeah. Like I said, I don't think I have a particular example or gripe. It's more like I could I think that's a good default, but then I don't think it should be a hard and fast rule. Like if there's a good
Right.
reason to change it, then it should be changed.
Okay. No, I've got an example. How about Spirit Legolas?
Hmm.
Spirit Legolas, outside of including him with Gimli, is real rough because you have to work really hard unless fine. Uh, if you have to work really hard for him to actually be worth it in the quest phase.
Yeah,
Otherwise, his only function is to ready another character, which you could easily do by not taking up a hero slot.
and I
Woo.
guess in that case, it's representing like, well, that particular art and is from kind of his ability to just shake off what's happening on Karadras and all the snow. And so that is a willpower moment to me. So I could see an argument for him having a higher willpower.
Yeah, I mean, just like I don't know, move a hit point into willpower, move an attack into willpower, whatever it happens to be. Like it's just it's kind of I don't know. I feel the same way about Theodred. Like, oh man, he's only got one willpower. Like the resource is good, and I do like Theodred, but at the end of the day, I kind of have this weird thing with my heroes where I really want them to be effectual and bombastic. I tend not to build decks that are kind of ally swarmy, and the allies are the stars, and the heroes are just there to produce resources and draw cards. So at the end of the day, if I'm throwing a guy into the quest, I want to have more than one willpower.
Yeah. See, I think you and me are on the same page there because I this is a potential topic for some other chat at some point, but our play styles are different. But yeah, I see lots of players who have great success with hero lineups that are more of a supportive force. You know, your Theodrids and your Arwens, even though she does have strong high willpower. So, um, but the heroes that aren't necessarily doing a ton of work themselves, they're just kind of supporting that. Whereas, yeah, I tend to go more for the decks that are kind of centered around the hero abilities in a way, and the strong heroes. But that's a big
I'm kind of
generalization because, of course, I
I'm
use
just
a little of both.
well, and I think yeah, no matter what, you got to change your strategy from time to time. But most of the time, when I'm building a deck, I'm excited about the hero combination. Like if you compare Lord of the Rings to Star Wars CCG or Thrones, where they have objectives and agendas that kind of modify what you're doing with your deck, potentially how you win, modify your incentives for mechanically in the game. That's what heroes do in Lord of the Rings. So it's kind of one of my favorite parts is just looking at different hero combinations and being like, all right, what can these guys do together?
Yeah, definitely.
But at the end of the day, there's lots of ends to this day. It turns out. Um, but what you're going for, I suppose, is ultimately what's going to govern that. Because if you're wanting to build a deck that just produces a lot of resources, then you probably don't care that Theodred's only throwing in one willpower to the quest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's his stats might as well be blank at that point. He's
Yep.
he's a cash register.
He's a cash register with decent pool of hit points for archery. He's a cash register pincushion.
Yeah. Although thankfully Theodred does have more tools to ready and do stuff so
Yes.
these days. But returning to our topic, are there any favorite quests of yours that we haven't talked about yet?
I'm sure. What one? I'm trying to pick one of my favorites out of Ringmaker. I did really like. I'm not sure if it's one of my favorites, but it tends to be one that I go to test against a lot, and that would be Celebrimbor's Secret.
Hmm.
Um, I do really like that quest, but it's kind of a nice tester. I do also really appreciate how much it feels like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Um,
There is an Indiana Jones reference in there, isn't it, with Belloc? Belloc.
yeah, Belloc, and the orcs are digging in the wrong place.
We just need a bullwhip attachment at some point, and then we'll be ready to go. I know what we'll do. Let's go cycle by cycle and say what our favorite quest is from each cycle,
There you
which may
go.
be a challenge. But so starting with the first Shadows of Mirkwood, I guess I'll go first since you just shared one. Oh, what would be my favorite from that? Yeah, I guess I'd have to go with Conflict with the Carrick, my Stockholm syndrome friend.
I'd still give it. So are we including the core box in this
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
deluxes that go along? Yeah, so I'd still give it to Journey Along the Anduin or Journey Down the Anduin. That's the
Journey
thing, right?
down.
Like
Yeah.
where they accidentally used it. They accidentally used it interchangeably. So technically, I think it's Journey Down the Anduin is the actual name, isn't it?
Yeah. Or is it Journey along
Because
the Anduin? Oh God, I'm so confused.
all right. Well, anyway, the second course set quest. I like it.
Okay.
How about Kaza Doom? That one's got a few fun ones, I think.
So Kaza Doom and Dwaradelf.
I'm probably gonna have to give it to Foundations of Stone.
Yeah, I think that has to be Foundations of Stone. And
Yeah, no,
yeah.
I did like the Watcher in the Water, and I used Into the Pit as a testing quest for a very long time. So I do have quite a fondness for that one, but Foundations of Stone is just cool.
Yeah, I think Watcher would be my second just because it has some fun things going on. Shadow and Flame is one I want to go back and play again because it's
With all the secrecy cards.
there are certain quests in cycles that I feel like I just forget about, or there's a psychological block, or for whatever reason I just don't play that often, and so that's on my revisit list is Shadow and Flame.
Yeah, I gotta do that too. I think I just Journey in the Dark is so good from the campaign,
It's the
though. I just
superior Balrog quest for sure.
uh-huh. It really feels like the Balrog, and it also does a really good job of kind of that impending doom with the doom objective, where you're just like, oh god, I gotta hurry, he's coming.
Yeah,
That's
for
a really
sure.
really good quest. That one's in my top three, I think.
I think the Hamalak is what initially soured me on that quest, but I think I beat the Nightmare version with like a Nori, just using the same tactic of just keeping at zero, but just by playing dwarves, which was interesting. It worked. Okay, so Heirs of Numenor and Against the Shadows.
If we hide behind the beards, he can't see us.
Somehow spreading more dwarves makes you more invisible to the Balrog for some reason.
Hiding among all the derelict statues and stuff.
Yeah, I think for Urza Numenor and Against the Shadow, I think that has to be Steward's Fear for me.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there too. I developed a kind of late in the game fondness for Druidan Forest.
Hmm.
I absolutely hated it initially because it's exactly what I've mentioned that I hate, where it's just hard control, where it just takes all of your options away from you. But it does it in a way that doesn't completely crush your soul.
Yeah.
So that one's still probably in my top three. But yeah, Steward's Fear is definitely my favorite.
Yeah, there's a
Blood of Gondor has some fun moments though.
Yeah, that was one that I initially was down on for whatever reason. I think because it came out at Gen Con, so it got overshadowed. But it's one I've played more recently, and I like it a lot.
The rising tension of those stacking hidden cards is a thing.
Yeah, there's definitely some strategic decisions there about when you're gonna try to reveal those, and so yeah.
It's a pretty cool press your luck mechanic. So I'd give that one a nod as well.
Okay, then we have Voice of Isengard and Ringmaker.
Mm. Mm.
Voice of Isengard. No, I'm
I
trying.
think I'm gonna have to go filthy casual on this one. Trouble in Tharbad is one of my favorites. I really like that quest.
I do like that one a lot now too.
But ultimately, I got to give it to the Three Trials because the Three Trials is just an awesome quest that does something different. It's different every time you play it. It's not crushingly hard, but can still hit you. Oh god, I love that quest.
God, I think we're just picking all the same class. I think I'd have to say Three Trials.
Welcome to Tea Time, chat. Your echo chamber.
I do have a fondness for Trouble in Tharbad as well, but also To Catch an Orc, but strictly in solo because I've played it in 3 or 4 player, and it's a location lock nightmare.
It's a nightmare in so many ways in
Yeah.
anything above one player.
But solo To Catch an Orc is one I play a lot. I don't know why. I just like I like the whole digging for oh god, I'm blanking on the orc's name now.
Mugash.
Mugash, yeah. I wanted to say Mugash, and I'm like, am I just thinking of that because of Zoolander? What's the
God.
What's the character in Zoolander? Oh God,
God, I hadn't made that connection. Thanks for that.
Mogatu or something. um, yeah. So to catch an orc, I like that whole dynamic and capturing him. Okay, let's see. So from there we have Ingmar Awakened
Angmar, yeah.
cycle, and
Angmar Awakened was a good cycle.
it was that was a really good cycle. That's definitely up there
Ah,
for potentially my favorite. That and Dream Chaser.
mhm. I'm just paging through the quests we have, though. What's funny is I really liked the cycle, but I don't think there's a single quest that like jumps out at me like some of the other ones. Um, I do like Escape from Mount Graham when I'm feeling something kind of cheeky and interesting. I wouldn't say I play it a lot. I think Treachery of Rudar probably gets it for me because that one's again another good quester that I tend to or tester rather tester quester
Yeah,
that I play a lot.
yeah, yeah. I think it. I think it has to be Treacher Rudar for me too.
God damn. No, I like the Dread Realm.
Dread Realm
You're
is on
wrong,
my
Ian.
Dread Realm is on my revisit list again because that was one I didn't play as much. I think a lot of the cycle enders because then you just end up playing the new stuff after that.
Yeah, and I also think that the cycle enders tend to be kind of blazingly hard in a lot of cases. So by the time I've finally butted my head up against it enough times to beat it, I'm just kind of done.
Yeah. I would never say I have a love for it, but I do have an appreciation for Karn Doom.
Yes.
And the reason why is because it's a absurdly difficult quest, but it actually the quests I ended up the decks rather that I ended up beating it with were not like uber power decks. They were see, I think I beat it solo with like a mono leadership deck. And in two-handed, it was like a Sylvan deck on one hand and a Dune here ranged attack on the other. So I appreciate that that quest is super hard, but
It's not unbeatable.
it's not unbeatable, and it actually gives you a little bit of freedom about how you want to approach
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's honestly I too don't play it very often, but that's one I look at where it's like that's a ridiculously hard quest that I don't hate because it's an interesting hard. It doesn't just lock you down and actually there's decisions to be made. There's several kind of ways around what it's doing as long as you kind of commit to that strategy. Like I think what I ended up doing is I kind of had a deck that could battle quest pretty well, and then Baragon with shield and some readying, and then I just beefed up Haldir and took things out in the staging area. And it didn't work every time, but that's where I got my W.
Yeah, whatever it takes. It
Yeah.
definitely leaves it open for some staging area attacks, which helps.
Mm-hmm.
So then we have the Dream Chaser cycle.
This one's tough. I really liked the cycle. I agree with you in that the sailing quests were fun. The sailing mechanic wore me down a little bit just because it really was about just how many bodies do I have on the table.
Yeah,
And the other thing is, I felt like off course was a really cool idea, but I don't think they did enough to play around with the fact that they had a gradient of off course. Like it was, for the most part, if you're off course or if you're at the worst setting.
right,
Like I
right.
thought they could have been cool, like to punish you if you're just slightly off course, but not at the same level where you're, fully off course.
Yeah,
I felt like there was maybe a little bit more room to explore there.
that's a good point. Yeah, to make it feel a little bit more like all those each little part of it matters versus because sometimes you just get to a point where you're like, well, forget it. I'm just gonna go all the way bad because I'm not winning this battle against sailing, and the in between doesn't matter. So
Yep, exactly.
I think it's kind of a toss up. I really like Temple of the Deceived map mechanic. Um, but I also really like Flight of the Stormcaller as kind of the best of the sailing, in my opinion.
Yep, I would agree. That one kept it the most interesting. God, if I had to give it to one scenario here, I would probably give it to Thing in the Depths. I don't know what it is, but some of the quests where we like switch gears mid quests, a lot of those I end up liking. Like I don't play it often, but I kind of like the Dunlin Trap. It sucks. The trap when it's sprung really hurts, but I kind of like that turning point in the story.
Yeah.
And I like the thing in the depths narratively because it's a cool moment in what's happening in the story when all of a sudden you become allies with these pirates you've been chasing down the whole time. And it's also kind of a cool little mechanic where the thing is grappling onto the different areas of the ship and you got to go try to beat it off, and
Yeah, I
that
think
got
that's
weird.
You need to what now? And I think that's definitely the biggest switch of any quest as far as you're changing your enemies to your friends, and yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I think I'll give it overall to Fly to the Stormcaller is my favorite of that.
Wow, we actually didn't agree on
Was
something.
that our first disagreement?
And I also really like Flight of the Stormcaller, so I don't even know if I'd call it a full-on disagreement.
I agree,
Um,
agree, agree.
I will give it another nod to I think what's the Raid on the Grey Havens? Is that the third one in
Hmm.
the actual box? That's another one where I'm like, that one's a hard quest, but I don't hate it
Yep,
because it's interesting hard.
it
So yeah.
is. Yeah, it actually it lets you beat it. You just have to figure out the right strategy. But
Yeah.
okay, and well, the cycle's not over yet, but we're not gonna wait another year to talk about the last pack. So, our favorite of our Herodrium cycle. Mm.
I really enjoyed the box a
Hmm.
lot. The quests that have come out since have been a little hit and miss for me, and again, it probably gets back to just my general complaint that the baseline difficulty of the game is a little higher than I would like. But the box I thought was really good. I'd probably give it to Escape from Umbar. I've played that quest a fair few times.
What would be my favorite? I
Long Arm of
think.
Mordor is fun. Again, if you're feeling something kind of weird and different, but there are some decks that just don't work with how that quest flows.
Yeah, I would. I would like Mumakil a lot more if Savage South wasn't didn't exist. I don't know. I might give it to Desert Crossing. I don't know. I like that one. Even though it piles on a ton of direct damage, it does something different
Mm-hmm.
than a lot of quests in terms of the setting. Obviously, walking through a desert, but the temperature thing and um, I think because the thing is, I think it would fall into one that I might hate if it did all the damage plus beefy enemies, but it's more just these enemies that kind of pick at you and then the
Mm-hmm.
damage, so it's just forcing you to manage a few different. So yeah, Desert Crossing, I think. I did like Dungeons a lot of Kirith Gurat, but in
Mm-hmm.
solo, um, I don't know. Maybe I just need to play it with different decks, but I still like that quest. But the reason it's not my favorite is because I feel like I've found just one strategy that I stick to, which is just like go like a turtle at the beginning, build up my army, and then just plow through it at the end. So yeah,
Boring.
I don't know how much staying power that will have for me, just because it seems like just kind of one way to go through it.
Mm.
Yeah, and the long arm is on my revisit list. I only played it a couple times. I need to go back to that one because it's so
Yeah,
specialized.
that one is so specialized, and I wonder for quests like that whether it's kind of worth it to try to custom build for it, or whether you just do something like I'll just play mono, so I don't have to worry about the sphere match after that first card I play, or
Yeah.
something like that. I also think that one's probably maybe a little limited in true solo because you only get to pick one of the objective heroes, and I think part of the fun of that quest is kind of figuring out what you want to do with the objective heroes. Does anyone ever do anything other than Kaliel and Furial if you're playing two player?
I don't think so.
Like it just makes so much sense to pick
Yeah.
those two.
I definitely like what they did with that quest, giving us some like new characters to control that aren't our heroes. It was
Yeah, and there was
interesting.
a really cool introduction to them being player cards in the
Yeah.
following pack. I thought that was a really cool thing to throw in there. And that's one thing that I continue to love and will rave about this game is how it kind of continues to push how it presents its story in the cards.
So that brings us to we talked a little bit about our favorite standalones, so we probably don't need to go through that again. But I guess to end, and this is going to be hard because I'm not going to do it by box, but your overall favorite saga quest.
The caveat that I have not yet played them all. I opened Mountain of Fire, played Kirith Gurat, or not Kirith Gurat, Kirith Ungol, and was like, oh god, you know what? I really, really should just finally get on my campaign now that I can finish it, start to finish. So I haven't played the last two quests. But that said, I expect them both to be blistering and maybe not to my particular tailored needs. So unsurprisingly, I'm gonna have to give it to Journey in the Dark just because that hits it. It hits my favorite part of the books and it does it so well.
I am gonna have to give it to Helm's Deep. That
Mm-hmm.
that was one that it was just I was nervous about before it ever came out because it's just such a huge moment in the books and movies. I'm like, how are they ever gonna do it justice? And they did. The whole like defense keyword and how you're trying to stave off the encounter deck from making progress. I think it just hit the feel of that moment so well, and it's just one that I can imagine coming back to and playing for that challenge factor. But it's hard. There's a lot of good saga quests.
Mm-hmm. I felt the saga overall has been really well done. There
Yeah,
are a couple quests in there that I kind of dread. I think I want to say the Land of Shadow Box is probably the weakest point for me.
I would agree with you on that one.
Just not just the passing of the marches and the crossroads just don't really tickle me. Shelob was okay.
Yeah,
She can get ridiculously swingy and stupid sometimes, but I did like that they attempted to do something different with the boss enemy, and I think they like 90% at least succeeded with that.
yeah, which is not surprising to me because if you took the parts of the book, that would be the one I would say would be hardest to adapt to a card game.
Yep. Yep. Agree.
Pelennor Fields is one I need to play more because I've only beat
Oh,
it.
that one's so good.
I
That
just
one's that's
I just
probably
played
my
it to
top
beat
three.
it, but yeah, it's definitely up there because that was another big battle that they just nailed it. I thought.
Yep. Oh god, that part where you toss allies into the staging area because they're fleeing Athelion. Oh, so cool.
Yeah, Ransom Man has a good idea in the chat to revisit this topic in the future with our favorite packs for player cards per cycle. I think that
I
will happen.
agree.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on favorite quests before we sign out of
Um,
here?
I mean, I tend to be kind of a player card player first. Most of the time I spend thinking or doing things in this game, it's exploring the player card pool, building decks, finding interactions there. But ultimately, what you need are quests. So it's something that I probably don't value highly enough just as a player where I sit. So having a conversation like this kind of reminds me, like, yeah, God, there's some really cool design things, really fun things happening in the quests. So just excited to see where they continue to push it.
Yeah, I think what this conversation has made me think of, funnily enough, because the focus is on favorite quests, but what it's made me think of is the quests I need to revisit. Because I feel like, and in player cards and decks, I sometimes get in a rut where I just focus on the same heroes and decks, and that's why doing Tea Time Tales helped me because it forced me out of that. But I feel like same thing with
Elfhelm is
quests,
my current crutch. I
like.
can't I can't stop playing with Elfhelm.
Well, he is pretty awesome.
Yes.
um, but the same thing happens with quests where I just get stuck in certain quests that I just keep going back to because I know that they're playable already and I like them. And then there's just certain quests that there's like a mental block for whatever reason that I don't think about or they seem too specialized. But sometimes I go back and play those quests and I'm like, huh, this isn't too like out there as I remember. Like I can play this with different decks. So I think I'm gonna
Hmm.
create a revisit list for myself and make it my homework to just start playing some of these off quests more.
I agree. I After I push through my campaign, assuming we're not inundated in new content, I need to do a
Well, who are
similar
we
thing.
kidding?
Yeah, I mean, a boy can dream. So yeah.
All right, I think that about wraps it up for this time. So we will be back when we will be back. I think we'll be a bit more regular now that we're past the holidays. But as always, you can follow my Twitter account at TailsFTCards for updates, or the Facebook page, or hang around Discord, the Cardboard the Rings Discord, which you should do anyway. Or you can just
Hmm.
poke your head in the Twitch channel now and then for updates. So until then, we will talk to you next time.